In fantasy football, finding that sleeper can turn your team from to potentially winning your league. Finding that late round upside is very important in fantasy football, right? You can't win your league in the first couple of rounds. You can certainly lose it by making bad decisions, but where the paper's made is deep in fantasy football drafts. Inside of today's video, I'm going to be talking about 10 must-draft sleepers for 2023 fantasy football. Now, some people will say, hey, you could sleep on a guy in any round, right? I think people are sleeping on Devontae Adams right now, but for the sake of today's video, to be considered a sleeper, you have to go from round 10 on. So all of these players go from the start of round 10 on. Round 10 starts with pick 109 in a 12-team league, so that's how we're going to be basing things based upon the composite ADP from ESPN, Sleeper, NFL, and RT Sports. Before we get on into things, though, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below if you're new. Whether you are new or not, hit that like button. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my 10 must-draft sleepers for 2023 fantasy football. We begin with my first must-draft sleeper of 2023 fantasy football, Zach Charbonnet, running back of the Seattle Seahawks. Composite ADP from ESPN, Sleeper, NFL, and RT Sports have him as the running back 37 at pick 111. Zach Charbonnet is the perfect example of a top-tier A1 steak sauce handcuff in fantasy football. If something was to happen to Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet would, in my opinion, based upon his great pass-catching upside, his solid rushing in college at UCLA, back-to-back seasons of over 1,100 rushing yards, his draft capital being the 53rd pick in the second round of the 2023 NFL Draft, I really do believe that Zach Charbonnet, in terms of my weekly rankings, if something happened to Kenneth Walker, the first week Zach Charbonnet plays as the lead back would be ranked as a top 15 running back in my rankings. There is a reason why the Seattle Seahawks drafted this guy in the second round when they just drafted Kenneth Walker in the second round of last year's draft. That is because they believe heavily in him. And again, that pass catching upside is very important for Charbonnet because he is going to be on the field a lot this season. I don't think that Kenneth Walker is some workhorse running back going to be getting 70+% of the snaps on this team at the running back position. I really think Charbonnet might get 40% of the snaps day fucking one for the Seattle Seahawks team. This is a team that is going to score a lot of points week in and week out. This is going to be a fantastic offense. And the upside of Zach Charbonnet, if something happened to Kenneth Walker, is uber insane. Zach Charbonnet could be a league winner that you get at pick 110 plus. Also, from a week in, week out standpoint, you wouldn't love to start Zach Charbonnet, but if you are in a real pickle, he is a guy that you can galaxy brain, talk yourself into starting him in any given matchup, even if Walker's healthy, because of that receiving upside, and maybe on the goal line, they hand the rock to Zach Charbonnet. Moving now to my number 2 sleeper for the 2023 fantasy football season, Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, quarterback of the New York Football Giants, composite ADP quarterback 15 at pick 115. Last year, he was top 10 in finish at the season, quarterback 9, and quarterback 10 in points per game. Last year, he had career highs in 2022. Most passing attempts, most passing yards, most yards per attempt, best completion percentage, most amount of rushing yards, and most rushing touchdowns. And this season, he has his best weapon core yet. Now, I'm not trying to gas the Giants up to have the best wide receiver core in the NFL. But over the last couple of years, the wide receiver core, the tight ends, have not been the best for Daniel Jones. This year, he's got Isaiah Hodgins, Jalin Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Darren Waller, who appears to be a huge target for Daniel Jones, as well as that nice check down insurance to Saquon Barkley. Last year, Danny Dimes, Vanilla Vic, was 14th in passing attempts, 15th in passing yards, 21st in passing touchdowns. He only threw 5 picks, but the bread and butter for Danny Dimes is the rushing upside. 4th in carries, 5th in rushing yards, and 3rd in rushing touchdowns. And he was incredibly efficient. 8th in true passer rating, 7th in QBR, 5th in accuracy rating, 1st in true completion percentage, and 9th in the amount of drop passes with 29. With a better wide receiver core in the second year of this Brian Daboll system, and Brian Daboll last season completely fucking transformed Daniel Jones and this whole Giants offense. Now, I don't expect the Giants to be one of the top end teams in the NFL, but they could be one of the better teams in the NFC. This is an offense that, again, I like the weapons that they added. I love the rushing upside of Daniel Jones, and I think this year he is going to set career highs yet again in terms of passing yards, passing touchdowns, all of that. I think Daniel Jones is going to have a much better season than most people. He only had a 3.2% passing touchdown rate last season. In terms of passing touchdown rate, the 5% number is very normal, and that's for pretty decent quarterbacks, right? I don't think Daniel Jones is some fucking trash can, right? Some garbage quarterback. So 3.2% rate, I expect that to go up again. Less drop passes, better wide receivers, Darren Waller. This is going to be the best year yet out of Daniel Jones, and I think because that rushing upside, he genuinely has the upside to finish as a top 5 quarterback at the end of the season, and I think there could be a couple weeks of the season where he finishes as the quarterback number 1. Moving to must-draft sleeper number 3, we got Ezekiel Elliott, running back of the New England Patriots. Composite ADP running back 34 at pick 146. Now, I know what you might be thinking right now. Nick, Ezekiel Elliott is as washed as it gets. Nick, Ezekiel Elliott was dog shit last season. Well, you might be right, because some interesting efficiency stats, he had 3.7 true yards per carry, 62nd at running back, 3.9 yards per touch, 55th, but he did average, so there's a bit of kind of cover for that, right? You can kind of make some excuses. 6.9, very nice, I like. Average defenders in the box, which is 7th at running back. So they were loading the box like Ezekiel Elliott loads his plate at Thanksgiving, because we all know Zeke is a fat bastard. Running back 22 in PPR last season, 23 in PPR points per game. He played in 15 games with 14 starts, 10th in carries, 21st in rushing yards, 50th in receptions, 54th in targets, 66th in receiving yards, but he scored 12 total touchdowns, 6th at running back. If him and Stevenson are healthy the whole season, there are going to be multiple games where Ezekiel Elliott just magically has 2 fucking touchdowns. Ramondre Stevenson could have 200 rushing yards or all-purpose yards, have a bunch of catches, make the defense look foolish, but Zeke's still going to be scoring the touchdowns. I genuinely believe when they're knocking on the goal line, it's going to be Jamal Williams time, right? Just like last year for the Detroit Lions offense, right? DeAndre Swift does it all, puts the defense in the fucking spin cycle, decleats a player, and then boom, on the goal line, Jamal Williams is the guy bursting it in. I think Zeke has some decent upside this season. Again, I get that he's not efficient anymore, but if you reduce his amount of touches, you reduce the amount of work that he has to put in and game out, I think that increases his efficiency because he won't have as much of a workload. If something happens to Ramondre Stevenson, now again, we do not root for injury. Same thing with Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. Zeke, while he might not be the best running back ever, that team is devoid of talent behind Zeke, so he would turn into a potential workhorse in New England. So coming off the board at running back, 34, pick 146. I certainly love the upside of Zeke this season. Moving to my number 4 must-draft sleeper. If you've enjoyed thus far, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button down below. Jalin Hyatt, wide receiver of the New York Football Giants. Composite ADP wide receiver 57 at pick 162. In that last preseason game, he scored a 33-yard touchdown against the Panthers. Obviously, you don't want to take everything from the preseason games. I think that's what's going to happen during the regular season, but Jalin Hyatt is incredibly fast. This is a guy that pulled his pants down and took a dump all over the Alabama Crimson Tide last year at Tennessee. He runs a 4.4 40-yard dash, 91st percentile, but honestly, he feels faster than that if you just watch his tape. Last year, he played 12 games at Tennessee, 67 receptions on 91 targets, 1,267 receiving yards, 18.9 yards per reception, 73.6% catch rate, 21.6% target share with 15 total touchdowns. That's a shit ton of touchdowns. So in terms of the wide receiver core we just talked about with Daniel Jones, there's a lot of unknown on who the number 1 target's going to be. Is it going to be Hodgins? Is it going to be Wandale? Is it going to be, could it be Hyatt? Could it be Shepard? Could it be Slayton? Or maybe it's going to be Darren Waller. That uncertainty is what gives Jalin Hyatt so much upside. I really think there is a simulation of this season where Jalin Hyatt ends up being the number 1 receiver in terms of targets, And if that doesn't happen, there's a good chance he's number 2 in terms of targets. The best thing about Jalin Hyatt as well is that you can insert him into your lineup, and he's one of those firecracker-like players, right? Maybe he scores 3 points and fucks you over, or maybe he scores 20-plus points because he's so fast. He has that deep down the field, game-breaking upside. So I'm a huge fan of Jalin Hyatt this season. We talked about it with Daniel Jones. I'm a big fan of Danny Dimes this year. I think Brian Daboll, second year of this system, really going to help the team out. And again, while that is the best wide receiver core Daniel Jones has ever played with, I think Jalin Hyatt could end up being the number 1 receiver in terms of targets on this team. Moving to must-draft sleeper number 5, Big Cock Brock Purdy, quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. Composite ADP quarterback 22 at pick 171. Last year was the quarterback 33 at the end of the season, quarterback 36 in points per game. But when you take into account his points per game number when playing 60+% of the snaps, which is a 6-game sample size, he was the quarterback 11. He played 9 games last year with 5 starts. He came in against my Dolphins and bent us over a fucking table, his first ever kind of coming out party when Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt. That hurt. Last year, Brock Purdy, 18.9 pass attempts per game, 152.7 passing yards, 7.6% passing touchdown rate with 13 passing touchdowns. That's going to go down. But even if it goes down, I think you'd still throw a bunch of touchdowns. He only threw 4 picks, 22 carries, 36, 13 rushing yards, 55th, 1 rushing touchdown, 20th. He's not going to go out there and run the rock like Kyler Murray or something, but he does have some rushing upside. If you look at him as an actual starter, when he began to start his first game through his divisional playoff win with the Cowboys, we don't include the Eagles game because he got hurt there, he had 1,854 passing yards, 16 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 66.8 completion percentage, and 8.4 yards per attempt. He was 147 of 220 in terms of completions to incompletions. Or to passing attempts, I guess, not incompletions, but you get what I mean. So Brock Purdy is in a loaded offense. George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Christian fucking McCaffrey. It shouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that Brock Purdy could, even with little rushing upside, finish as a top 12 quarterback. And when you draft him at quarterback 22, the upside is insane. Brock Purdy is my number 1 target for my 3rd quarterback in 2 quarterback superflex leagues, right? Because he is just buried in the rankings. Trey Lance has not looked good in training camp in preseason. Now I know, Nick, he played kind of good against the last preseason game because he's playing up against 3rd and 4th stringers. When push comes to shove, when the lights are bright, Trey Lance crumbles. He fucking crumbles. Brock Purdy is the guy. He's the number 1 quarterback for this team. I don't think mono man Sam Darnold's taking over. It is Brock Purdy season in San Francisco. Before we pivot into must-draft sleepers 6 through 10, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor over at Underdog Fantasy. Now, if you guys watched on Sunday, we did a draft-a-palooza for 10 hours doing 10 drafts on Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the best place to draft for fantasy football best ball in 2023, and they have the biggest fantasy football contest ever. Best Ball Mania 4, $25 to enter, 150 max entries, $3 million to first place, $15 million in total prizes. If you don't know what Best Ball is the best thing about fantasy football. It's the draft and that's it. There's no waiver, no trades, and no in-season management. At the end of every single week, Underdog automatically puts the highest scores into your lineup for you. So you can seemingly do 1,000 drafts and then at the end of the season come back and see how much money you won. So if you're not into tournaments, these big tournaments like Best Ball Mania, they also have sit and go leagues, which is basically just like your normal fantasy league. With as low of a buy-in as $3, it's you versus 11 other people. The top 2 places make money. If you want to sign up for Underdog Fantasy, I also think it's a great way to prepare for your fantasy football drafts. Use promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description for a first match deposit bonus of up to $100. You deposit $100, they give you an additional $150, additional $50, $25, and additional $25. The max is $100 and the minimum is $10. So make sure you guys check that out. Again, promo code Notorious or click on the link in the video description. At number 6, we move to Nico Collins, wide receiver of the Houston Texans. Cousin Nico, let's go bowling. Composite ADP, wide receiver 59, pick 167. Now, if you look at Nico Collins' stats from last season, they are far from orgasmic, right? Kind of basic, right? Wide receiver 77 in PPR, 53 in PPR points per game, 10 games played with 7 starts, 63rd in targets, 72nd in receptions, 68th in receiving yards, and 76th in total touchdowns. But the reason why we like Jalin Hyatt is very similar to why we like Nico Collins this season. There is a legitimate path, and you could argue the path is significantly easier for Collins to be the number one receiver compared to Hyatt. And if Collins isn't the number one receiver, he is clearly the number two. Collins' biggest competition is John Mechie to being the number one wide receiver. Now, Nico Collins still had multiple games last season where he flashed. He looked really good, and that was with Brandon Cooks on the team. Now Brandon Cooks is gone in Dallas. Nico Collins, in terms of efficiency, had a 66.7% catch rate, second at wide receiver, and a 112.1% true catch rate, fourth at wide receiver, despite the fact that the target accuracy was awful. 6.2 target accuracy, 100th at wide receiver. Now I don't think CJ Stroud is going to come out there as a rookie week one and slice and dice his way through the defense, look like the second coming of Patrick Mahomes, but CJ Stroud is levels above Davis Money Mills, giraffe-necked man himself, looking like the fucking mascot of Toys R Us. Nico Collins is good. He flashed. I think it's just going to take a decent quarterback, not some bottom-of-the-barrel talent like Davis Mills, to elevate Nico Collins to be better. Plus, their head coach, Lovie Smith, is now gone. And we all know that guy is a bit of an idiot. So Nico Collins is going to be in a very good spot in 2023 to be the number one receiver on the Texans, which has a decent amount of upside, even if the team isn't all that great. Moving now to sleeper number 7, Tank Bigsby, running back of the Jacksonville Jaguars, composite ADP, running back 50, pick 174. Now, I have talked about Tank Bigsby so many times on this channel. I have basically given him the more metaphorical Gawk 9000, right? I love Tank Bigsby. Third round pick in 2023 at pick 89. He played 3 years at Auburn. Every single season, he had over 800 rushing yards. Last season at Auburn, 21 years old, 12 games played, 179 rushes for 970 yards, 30 receptions for 180 yards, 15.3% target share, 10 total tugs. Now, he's not the biggest back on earth. He's not built like Derrick Henry or something. I don't expect him to run out there and stiff arm someone in Middle Earth like Derrick Henry did with Josh Norman. 6 foot, 210. Despite having the third lowest graded run blocking line in the SEC last season, he finished with 4.2 rushing yards after contact, ranking 7th, and he also had 5.5 yards per carry. Now, I don't hate Tank Bigsby. I don't think Tank Bigsby is just some garbage NFL player. But let's call a spade a spade. Travis Etienne has struggled to catch passes, despite the fact that why a lot of people liked him out of Clemson was that Trevor Lawrence-Travis Etienne connection that they would have in the NFL. So he's not the best pass catcher. He also struggles on the goal line. He can't get it up. He needs a Viagra to get into the end zone. Tank Bigsby is a bulldozer. He's going to run his way into the end zone, jam it into the end zone. He's also great at catching passes. So Etienne might get cucked out of the goal line work and out of third down opportunities. And there have been so many reports that as the season goes along, they want to ramp Tank Bigsby up even further. Crank them up like one of those little things. The jack in is it a jack in a box where you crank it up and goes do 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 do. You know what I'm talking about? And the clown flies out, right? Tank Bigsby is in a great situation, just like we talked about with Charbonnet. If Kenneth Walker goes down, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, he would legitimately be. Charbonnet could be a top 12 running back in my rankings that week. Something happened to Etienne, the same thing with Tank Bigsby. This is an insane offense in the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson, Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne. So again, I don't necessarily expect week 1 Tank Bigsby to smash or something, but I do think he does have a lot of upside, and he is a top-tier handcuff. Moving now to must-draft sleeper number 8, DJ Chark, baby Chark, wide receiver of the Carolina Panthers, composite ADP wide receiver 65 at pick 182, wide receiver 75 in PPR last season, 58 in PPR points per game. On the Lions, he had 10 starts, 11 games, not the best season, 79th in targets, 87th in receptions, 64th in receiving yards, 50th in total touchdowns, though he was really efficient, right? When he got the ball, he did some things with it, right? 10th in yards per target, 7th in yards per reception, and 7th in route win rate with a 51%. So, he is now on the Carolina Panthers. There's reason to believe he could be the number 1 target. Sure, they have Jonathan Mingo, who they just drafted. Sure, they have Adam Thielen. They have Terrace Marshall, who's hurt. And they got DJ Chark. Do. he has a clear path, a crystal clear path laid in front of him to be the number one receiver on this team. Now, I think Bryce Young's going to spread the ball out a decent amount, but if Bryce Young steps up in his rookie year, maybe plays really good, then the upside of DJ Chark is incredibly high, and the investment is very low. So while I have DJ Chark as my favorite receiver to target from the Carolina Panthers, if you said, Nick, I'd rather draft Adam Thielen, Nick, I would rather draft Jonathan Mingo, then go right ahead. Because the same principles align for those other players. But we have Adam Thielen, seems like he might be a little over the hump right in age. He's getting a little older. He's maybe not that guy, pal, anymore, right? DJ Chark, he was that guy in Jacksonville, then wasn't that guy, but he's not that old. I think he's still got some juice left. I think DJ Chark could be the number one receiver in Carolina. Moving now to must-draft player number 9, Luke Musgrave. Now, if you fucking punt Pat McAfee style the tight end position, this is a perfect guy to draft. And if you go with the more risky tight end number 1, for instance, you draft Gerald Everett or like Tyler Conklin or something, Musgrave is great tight end number 2 to draft because he's a rookie, right? You don't necessarily need to start him week 1, but I think he does have big upside as the season prolongs. Tight end 26 in composite ADP, pick 208. Matt Schneiderman of The Athletic reported that Musgrave has been anything but short of spectacular thus far in camp. This was a couple days ago. The rookie tight end has shown a lot of flashes so far. Musgrave missed time last year due to knee surgery, but he was able to run the 40-yard dash and did some other of those agility drills. He ranked 88th in terms of 40-yard dash with a 4.61 and ranked 15th all-time in athleticism score at the athleticism score at the tight end position. He only played 2 games last year because he was hurt. 11 receptions on 15 targets, 169 receiving yards, 15.4 yards per reception, and 1 receiving touchdown. But he played 12 games in 2021 as a 21-year-old at Oregon State, 22 receptions on 40 targets, 304 receiving yards, 13.8 yards per reception, 12.5% target share, 1 receiving touchdown. The stats, again, not amazing, but you gotta watch the tape, right? This bastard is 6'6", 253 pounds, and was a second-round NFL draft pick. This guy could be the number 2 target on the Packers offense behind Christian Watson. We don't know how much Jordan Love loves to target the tight end position at the NFL level, but we've known in the past that these rookie quarterbacks, I know, Nick, you fucking dumbass, you know Jordan Love's not a rookie, right? But like a young quarterback in his first situation really to start a couple games in a row is going to be for the Packers. So Musgrave might be a big target for him. He's a huge red zone threat. Again, the guy's fucking 6'6", 250 pounds. He's a beast. He's a motherfucking goblin, okay? Luke Musgrave on the Packers. Again, this guy is free. You might not even have to draft him. You might be able to pick him up off the waiver wire. But I like to stash him if I have a shittier tight end as my tight end 1 because of the upside. Because of the fact that he could be a big piece of this Green Bay Packers team. I have read nothing but positive reports about Musgrave. I haven't read one report that was like, this Musgrave guy fucking reeks. If you do enough research on a lot of players, you will find that there are some beat reporters that think that this player sucks, right? You'll see like, oh, this player's struggling. I haven't seen anything about Luke Musgrave, and I've perused the internet for takes on Luke Musgrave. I believe in the guy. I believe in him coming out of the draft, out of Oregon State, and I believe in him now as a late round flyer that could potentially be like a top 15 tight end in terms of ADP. Next season, to close the video out, we are going for a long shot, a deep shot from 3. Stephen Curry meme shooting from the moon. I just did the Lonzo Ball shot, though. Shame Lonzo's not going to be able to play again this season. Tyquan Thornton, wide receiver of the New England Deflatriots, composite ADP wide receiver 101 at pick 335. This is another guy where the wide receiver room for his team is murky. Juju, I mean, they paid him, so he's going to get some targets. Devontae Parker, paid him as well. Kendrick Bourne, Kayshon Boutte, and Demario Douglas. Tyquan, banged up last year, 13 games played with 9 starts. He's looked good in both years of preseason when he was playing. And he had 2 top 18 performances last season. Now, that's nothing to fucking jizz your pants about like the Lonely Island song, but there's things to talk about here. I think this offense is going to be better. Right? Last year under Matt Patricia, they were taking a nap like Snorlax all season long, right? They didn't let Mac Jones cook. Bailey Zappi, they let him cook, throw it deeper down the field. They're better under Bailey Zappi than Mac Jones. Again, I love shitting on Mac Jones. I don't think Mac Jones is even all that good. But I also understand that it's hard to be that bad again. The wide receiver room's murky. Tyquan has looked good. I know he's built like fucking Kevin Durant, real skinny, real tall, but the upside's there. He was a guy we talked about last year as a waiver wire ad, right? He's a good player. Just the situation was gross. But this year, the situation feels a little bit better. The wide receiver room, still very murky. Tyquan could easily be the number 2 guy. And Juju hasn't been the definition of health. Juju kind of gets banged up. One of those guys that gets hurt fucking brushing his teeth, accidentally shoves the toothbrush down his throat, fucking Mia Malkova style, and chokes on it, right? So Tyquan Thornton, again, this is a deep shot. It's not a lock that Tyquan's the number 2 guy, but I just like the talent that I saw on tape. I like the flashes that I saw, and I like the player in a great situation. For me, I like Tyquan Thornton. If you don't like Tyquan Thornton, then go with Devontae Parker. I think both of them are decent options to pick late for the Patriots. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button down below. Make sure you guys check out Underdog Fantasy, link in the video description for that first match deposit bonus of up to $100. Check out any of the videos that are on your screen right now. They're all great if you haven't seen them. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good